Welcome back, Tiger fans, to the Rock M Radio's football podcast before the box score. I'm Nathan Hurst. The OG Rock M Nate is currently sailing the seven seas with young children in tow. He's a braver man than I am. So while he's doing his best to avoid getting the norovirus on a cruise ship, we'll hold down the home front here. And today, instead, I'm joined by Rock M football writer Quentin Corpuel. Quentin, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Nathan. I will do my best to roleplay Nate. Unfortunately, for viewers that were potentially interested in seeing young children interrupt this episode, they are out of luck tonight. But we'll have a stress-free episode in that regard, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I know I personally would probably get seasick if I was trying to podcast on a rocking boat. I'm not sure he even has internet capabilities out in the middle of whichever of the seven oceans that he is currently in right now. So we'll be perfectly fine with you as a replacement. I'm sure you'll do awesome. So we've had a few small news items come through the since the last time that we recorded the Before the Box Score podcast a couple of weeks ago now. So we'll chat about those for a minute. First off, it came out late last week that they have officially once again moved the starting opening football game of the 2024 season against Murray State to Thursday night. This will be the third straight year that the Tigers have started on that Thursday night. So the new start date for the season will be August 29th at 7 p.m. on SEC Network. As a season ticket holder myself, personally, who lives in Columbia, I actually greatly enjoy these opening Thursday nights. It's just a kind of a fun celebration of the start of the new season. It's an excuse to take a 5-day weekend. I can take an easy excuse, take Thursday off because I got tailgate and get ready. Take Friday off because you just were up late at the game. Then you got the weekend, then you got Labor Day, and all of a sudden you're looking at a really nice 5-day weekend. I'm not quite sure if that hits the same for ticket holders that may live in St. Louis, Kansas City, or farther away. They may have to drive in on a weeknight. Might not be as convenient for them, but I mean, that's the case anytime, but Thursday night might be a little tougher. But I know personally, selfishly, it's a move that I like, and it seems like we're getting this game against an SES school on national TV. It's going to be on SEC Network, not on SEC Network Plus, which it very well may have been if they kept it at 1 p.m. on Saturday the next day. So it gets a little more exposure for the program. People can turn on, watch Luther Burden start his Heisman campaign, hopefully blowing out the Racers. We'll see. Quentin, what are your thoughts on moving a Thursday game versus a Saturday game?
Yeah, like from an adult perspective, a student perspective is kind of similar. I think it depends from a student perspective if you do have class the next day. I do not. My Fridays next semester will be completely class free, so I really don't mind. And I think the start of any season, especially for a team that's supposed to be good as Mizzou is in 2024, I think people were going to go to the game and turn out regardless. Yes, I think it does matter for the people that don't live in Columbia that have to drive a little bit on a weeknight. But at the same time, I think people were going to show out regardless. And it gives people, again, as you said, an excuse to go out on a Thursday night. I know from a student perspective, some of my friends, they don't really like getting up for those 11 a.m. games because some people you gotta start tailgating real early. I know some people that start tailgating around the 7 o'clock hour, and that sounds kind of painful after a potential Friday night out or just a Friday night in general. And so I think those night games are really beneficial, whether it be on Thursday or Saturday, and especially against a team like Murray State that, in theory and on paper, Mizzou should blow out. I agree with you in that it's going to be a fun celebration to start the season.
Here's a secret, Quinn. You don't have to go to class on Friday if you have a class on Friday. So not that I'm advocating for skipping classes, but if you were to be one of those unfortunate students that happen to have a class on Friday, it's early in the semester, or you won't have any exams at that early in the semester. Just sleep in, just take it easy. You'll be okay. You can make it up. If you have a cool professor, maybe they'll just cancel class altogether.
I really appreciate those words. I guess I'm just too good and stuck up of a student to even be thinking about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't really think about that. That's a really smart choice.
Take it from someone that skipped his fair share of Friday classes. Your GPA doesn't really matter that much as long as it's high enough to get you the diploma at the end. Now, for me, if you want to go on and be go to law school or go to get a medical degree, keep that GPA high. But I think you could, for those students who do have class Friday, you got my official permission to just skip one day, just one, that one. The other ones you can go to all the other Friday classes.
I appreciate the words, Professor Hurst. I will definitely be thinking about that come August 29th.
Yeah, it's worth it. The experience, be out late Friday, Thursday night, watch a blowout win will be worth it for sure. All right, so moving on, another probably more important piece of news that broke since we last recorded here. Eli Drinkwitz got his first commitment of the recruiting class for the 2025, at least the prep recruiting class of 2025. That came with Matt Zollers' commitment. He is a quarterback from Pennsylvania, one of only 2 Pennsylvanians that I can think of that have committed to Mizzou, let alone even attended Mizzou. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Harold Brantley's the only one that Nate or I could figure out has even come from Pennsylvania, at least in the last 20, 25 years. So the fact that we're opening up a new pipeline potentially to a state that, while it isn't teeming with tons and tons of talent, does put out a few good players every year. Get a guy out of there, a guy who had offers from in-state Penn State, which is very difficult to pull players, especially 4-star quarterbacks, out of Pennsylvania if they have a Penn State offer. But beyond Penn State, also in-state Pitt had given him an offer, and more impressively, in my opinion, Georgia had given him an offer. In fact, Georgia was his last visit before his commitment. So they had the last word, but yet it seemed like something that Eli Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore said to him over this process really stuck out. He felt more comfortable, he said, with Mizzou. So he chose Mizzou. And typically, at least a lot of Mizzou fans tend to complain about the fact that as soon as a player commits to Mizzou, it seems like their rankings take a little nosedive, at least in the past. Now, maybe not within the new era, the new Drinkwitz era, but in the past, there seems to have been a trend, and this could just be purely, whiny Mizzou fan in me, but it seemed to be a trend that Mizzou player would commit. All of a sudden, they were a high 3-star, they get knocked down to a low 3-star. Maybe they were a 4-star, they're knocked down to a high 3-star. However, right after Zollers committed, yesterday, I believe, On3, one of the new big recruiting services, actually bumped him up in their rankings. He is now the number 2 quarterback in the class of 2025, according to On3 Sports, which is pretty cool, pretty darn cool to have somebody ranked that highly. Now, a lot can change. We still are, 18 months away from even getting him to sign, but pretty cool that the first commitment of this class was one that's ranked so high. Quentin, you jumped on here on the Rock M Radio podcast feed right after the announcement. You were first to report on the podcast sphere about Matt Zollers' commitment. In the last 6 days, I think it's been since that commitment. What have your thoughts changed? Have you added more thoughts? Anything else that you'd like to share about landing Matt Zollers?
Nothing too new. I just am continually impressed by the fact that you said Georgia was his last visit, and after that Georgia visit, Zollers, one of the things that he said stuck out to him was the continuity within the coaching staff, which is great. That's a great thing to have, especially if someone's trying to sell you something. If I commit to this place, will you still be there to carry out that vision that you just sold me? And Georgia's, yes, their coaching staff is very continuous. There's a lot of continuity there. With Mizzou, you look maybe a year into the future, if Kirby Moore, who is set to be the offensive coordinator again next year, if he has another really good season, which I like to think he will, I have a really hard time seeing a world where he is not one of the hottest head coaching candidates in all of college football. So if I'm an incoming commit, let's say class of 25 like Zollers is, and Kirby Moore, for example, is selling me this vision, why should I buy it if the person that sold it to me might not be there in a year to carry it out? But Zollers still commits to Mizzou anyway, even though the offensive coordinator might not be there at this time next year. So I think the commitment, at least on the outside, looked like a commitment to Drinkwitz and the program versus a commitment to mostly the offensive coordinator as well, which I think if I were like just a regular old Mizzou fan, I would be really encouraged by that, because that says a lot that a guy's basically his version of a head coach on the offensive side of the ball might not be there in a year, yet he still believes enough in the whole of the program to feel comfortable committing here.
Absolutely. And if I'm going to put my pessimistic Nate hat on, he's not here, so I'm going to wear his hat on, put his hat on just for a minute. You make a great point about the fact that he's committing to Mizzou, to Drinkwitz, but also Kirby Moore really seemed to connect well with him. There's a great chance that he's not here next year. Who knows? I mean, honestly, hopefully he's not, because that means they killed it again this year, and then he gets an opportunity to move on somewhere else. I mean, it'd be great if he came back again, but my guess is if he's not here next year, it's because he had more success. Does a commitment mean that in 9 months from now, however many months it is till December, 9 months from now, Zollers can't change his mind and move on somewhere else? No. I mean, that means that he's completely wide open to change out whenever he wants. So it hurts him none at all to commit early, with knowing that door is still going to be open for him if down the road Kirby Moore heads off somewhere else. So the recruiting game is a long one. It's a painful one. We've got a long time before Matt signs on the dotted line here. So I'm going to take my pessimistic hat back off. And I think I agree with you that if he's committing this early, that means he is committing to Eli Drinkwitz, because he knows full well that Kirby Moore was considered for Alabama's offensive coordinator position. I mean, he didn't get that job, but his name was getting thrown around a lot. Even if he doesn't get a head coaching job next cycle, there's easily a chance that another blue blood type program looks his way as well. But Zollers, if he's committing this early, that means he's committing to the program. He's not necessarily committing to a specific position coach or coordinator. At least that's what I hope the case is. 9 months is a long time to hold on to a guy.
Yeah. So, I was just going to add, another thing I'm still impressed by is that Mizzou beat out Georgia and Penn State. Now, it's not like Zollers was in Penn State's quote-unquote backyard. Where he's from in Pennsylvania is about 3 hours away from Happy Valley, which I personally would not call someone's backyard. But at the same time, we saw this past year Mizzou's ascent into I would call a premier college, like nationally, like awesome college football program. They're not necessarily at the level of maybe a Death Star like a Georgia is right now. They're pretty dang close. And I think beating them and Penn State out for a highly touted quarterback recruit, it says a lot about where they stand in college football, which is especially awesome comparatively to where they have been. And regarding the rankings, yeah, it'd be cool if he maybe got bumped up to a 5-star at some point in the future. I'm not going to pay as much attention to that. I mean, yeah, it's cool that Mizzou landed a guy that could be ranked as a 5-star pretty soon, depending on how next year goes. But I'm just going to continue to watch the tape, see if he does improve. Just some of the things that really impressed me is that he obviously has a cannon. He can throw 60 yards in the air pretty easily, but he has touch too. If you need a fade ball in the back of the end zone, if you need a quick slant, it's not howitzers all the time with him. He can put a little touch on the football, and he's really accurate. He's pretty safe with the football. I believe last year he had something like 37 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. So he's got the tools. He's got an awesome arm, but he also has the accuracy, and he also seems to have the smarts. So I think seeing him improve on that even more this year is what I care about. And look, if he fields more high major offers, more offers from the Alabamas and the Georgias and the premier programs in college football, that means he's playing really well. And if he sticks to Mizzou, if he sticks with Mizzou, even after that hypothetical scenario happens, I think that'll say even more about where they stand. And so I'm really encouraged. I'm really excited. And I think he could compete should he make it to Mizzou. I think he could compete pretty quickly for a starting quarterback job.
Definitely. He's coming in 2025, so we know Brady Cook will have graduated and moved on. At the moment, the depth chart looks like Drew Pine, transfer, who will be on campus this summer. And he's got 3 years of eligibility left. Then we've got Aiden Glover, who will be a freshman this year. Very good chance that he redshirts this year, so he'll still have 4 full years of eligibility after that, and then your assortment of walk-ons after that. So really, there's only 3 guys at the moment, including Matt Zollers, that will be contending for that starting job in 2025. You'd have to like his chances, to compete with Drew Pine right up there at the top. We've seen in the past that Drinkwitz likes experience. He will often play experience over young talent. Who knows, where that goes from here. But I agree that he will come in, and he's committing to a program where he knows that he will have the opportunity. That was to come in and compete. That has to have been one of the big selling points when they committed him and say, hey, look, our guy's going to be gone. There's some other guys that we like, but we like you too, and we think you can come here and compete for that starting job, even as a freshman. So looking at the recruiting class as a whole, a typical rule of thumb is you want to take 1 quarterback a year. That, especially, that was the typical rule before the transfer portal. I'm not sure if that rule has changed or not, but that seems to kind of be how Drinkwitz has been running it. He's taken one quarterback a year each of the years that he has been here at Mizzou. So last year was Aiden Glover. This year and last year we actually had a different commitment. He then decommitted. That kind of threw them for a loop, and they had to kind of scramble, I think, to find another quarterback commitment for the class that ended up being Aiden Glover. All things considered, I think that was a pretty solid land last year, considering how they lost the guy that they originally thought they were going to get. This year, the very first commitment of the class is the quarterback. So that may take some pressure off of the coaching staff to find that quarterback in that class. They've already got him checked off the list. We can move on to other areas, other players that the coaching staff likes. Any thoughts, Quentin, about how this commitment, now that we've got this highly ranked, big name quarterback on the list, on the dot, written in pencil to come in, how might this commitment help kind of bolster the rest of the recruiting class? Once again, he's the first guy we've got committed. Can we expect to see some more commitments coming here, maybe a little bit more rapid pace now that we got this first guy in the fold?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a chance. There's 2 things I think about regarding this. One is that you just potentially nailed the most important position on the field, which I think is a pretty big deal. And second of all, if I'm a wide receiver or a tight end recruit, and I see Mizzou's got this guy, you're like, whoa, throw 60 yards accurately. And I'm going to this program that's really awesome. It's a quarterback has that power that I don't think really any other position really has at that level, is it can create a domino effect. You see a school that gets a big-time quarterback early on, and I think there's a very good chance that wide receiver, tight end, just pass catcher recruits in general would follow suit. And so I think it's really awesome that Mizzou not only got a really good quarterback, but they got him first. They got him first in the recruiting class. And again, I think that could create a pretty positive domino effect that could bode well for the class of 25.
Yeah, there's really no better way for football to create recruiting momentum to nail a big name quarterback right up off the top. Now, it'd be great to bring in a 5-star defensive lineman as your first get. Absolutely. Wouldn't turn that guy down at all. A 5-star or 4-star wide receiver, that would be great too. But to get your quarterback, the guy that you're hoping will be the leader of your team for the next 2, 3, 4 years, right up at the top. And then he can start hopefully doing his own recruiting of some of the guys he knows that the staff is going after. I can't see a world where that doesn't help. Now, how much will it help? That remains to be seen. A lot of that, is still going to be on Drinkwitz's job to close the deal on a lot of these guys. That seems like we're making a little more closer, getting a little more closer, if you will, to make perhaps some more commitments. Seems like there's a little more rumors and rumblings. Not going to throw any specific names out yet because we don't really have any announcement times, but there's a few guys that a couple receivers whose names have been rumored. Hopefully this time 2 weeks from now when we're recording again, we might have another name or two to talk about. We'll see kind of a slow start to this recruiting cycle for Mizzou, but they were slow last year as well. And that class came together just fine. Was it the best class that he's brought in? No, but that class also didn't have the number 2 rated quarterback in the entire country on it. So hopefully that means this class might surpass last year's, even if it's starting equally as slowly. Moving on from adding players to losing players, the transfer portal just opened on Monday, April 15th. This is a 2-week portal window where players can enter into the portal, enter their names into the portal. So from this week through the end of April, players will be able to enter their name into portal. That does not mean they need to commit by the end of April, but they have to at least submit their name into the portal. So with that, we have 3 Mizzou players that have, if not officially entered the portal, have said that they will be putting their names in the portal. Let's chat about those for a few minutes. The first one, Ryan Horskamp, a tight end from Washington, Missouri. He was the first recruit that Drinkwitz got in his first full year of recruiting. So that doesn't include the early 2020, late 2019 recruiting cycle where he was basically just trying to salvage Barry Odom's last class. The first full year of recruiting that Drinkwitz did, the very first recruit he got to commit was Ryan Horskamp, a high 3-star. I think one service might have had him at a low 4-star at some point in the process. Anyway, tight end from Washington. He played in 4 games his freshman year, flashed a little bit his sophomore year. He played in 9 games, but he wasn't super productive. He only had a couple catches in that time. I know my predecessor on this podcast, BK, was kind of one of his favorite what-if players. Never really found his groove on the roster. He played those 9 games his sophomore year, but honestly, that was probably because there was really no one else that could play. Nico Hay had announced at that point that he had medically retired. So there's a pretty empty tight end room, to be honest. So then fast forward to last year, 2023, Brett Norfleet comes in, freshman, kind of takes that job right up at the beginning of the season. And on top of that, another freshman, Jordan Harris, kind of seemed to cement a backup role as a good blocking tight end. Tyler Stevens, it seems like he's in his 7th year. I think he's in his 5th year of eligibility, announced that he's returning. So that's 3 guys that were already ahead of Horskamp on the depth chart before he even, before the summer even gets here. So not a huge surprise, in my opinion, that he might look somewhere else. Quentin, what are your thoughts on the tight end room? That's not really one that we've talked about in the last year or so, just because it seems like Norfleet took that job over and is very talented. So how does this affect the tight end room, do you think?
I mean, not a whole lot. I mean, as you said, there were 3 guys ahead of him on the depth chart, and I don't think he was Brian Robinsoning this one and waiting until his senior year, and he would finally get his opportunity after sitting behind his first 3 seasons. But I think Horskamp was a slight victim of, especially in 21 and 22, Drinkwitz as the offensive play caller, not really utilizing tight ends at all. Even when Stevens in 2022 was the quote unquote starter. Yes, there have been some conversations about whether he is actually a good tight end or not, especially after the first game against Louisiana Tech, he fumbles. And then you look at last season, 2023. I thought it was really encouraging when he threw that awesome block that freed up Luther Burden for a touchdown on the left sideline. But then the LSU game happens and he turns into Giants Evan Ingram and couldn't really seem to catch a whole lot. But even so, Horskamp was never supplanting him. And so we're going to look at the other 2 guys that transferred in a second, Kyle Montgomery and Michael Cox. I think they found themselves in similar situations where they were really buried on the depth chart. They had been buried on the depth chart for a few years. And I mean, in this day and age, it's the easiest it's ever been to transfer. And so I think they picked a pretty good time to jump ship and find somewhere else where they'll get more opportunities, whether that's at another Power 5 school or a mid-major. But I think for Horskamp, I understood it. The one cool thing he did at Mizzou was catch the touchdown against New Mexico State. And that was about it in his 3 years here at Mizzou. And if that's your body of work in 3 years, I wouldn't really blame you for trying to find somewhere else that where you might be maximized, where you might be higher up on the depth chart. So I completely understand it. It's kind of weird. I guess I could save the 21 recruiting class argument for when we're done talking about Kyle Montgomery and Michael Cox. But I understand why Horskamp did what he did.
Definitely. And I think you made a great point. Drinkwitz really did not use the tight ends at all the first 2 years that he was here at Mizzou. At least certainly in the passing game, they would be on the field for blocking. And I thought Horskamp did show some nice flashes at blocking, but then all of a sudden we finally get an offensive coordinator in that likes to use the tight end, or at least is making an effort to utilize the tight end. And all of a sudden, oops, we've got Brett Norfleet in here who is a better athlete, bigger, stronger, just kind of obviously fills that position. Could Horskamp have put up a little better numbers had he given the opportunity earlier in his career? Would that have changed things down the road? Very possible. But it was just kind of bad luck, I think, just in terms of the system that was being run at the time. I think he will. I think he's a guy that will find a home somewhere, probably at a lower level where he can get a lot more playing time and could be a productive player. Just because he's got the size, he's got what you want as a tight end. Just not wasn't going to work out for him here. Next player on the transfer losses list, as you mentioned, Kai Montgomery. Kai was a 4-star recruit from Indianapolis. He was in the same recruiting class that Horskamp was in 2021. He came in as an edge player and was really one of the more exciting recruits of that really good 21 class. Unfortunately, he was a victim of multiple injuries. It seemed like he would one injury after another. He tore an ACL. I think he had an ankle. It was a mess from day one, and he never got on the field, even though he was probably one of our, at least ostensibly one of the more physically talented players on the roster, at least back in 21, 22. Could never get on the field because of injuries. It seemed like in the time that he was off the field, he was bulking up. He added at least 30, 40 pounds because he was about 250 when he came in. He's listed at 285 now. He looked bigger than that to me in the spring game because they had him playing in defensive line. It could just be because he was playing next to other big dudes. But he was playing in the interior defensive line at the spring game, which is the first time any Tiger fan even got to see him on the field because he had been hurt for last year's spring game. He was hurt for the whole year before that. So we finally get to see him on the field. It was hard to tell for any defensive players, to be honest, in that spring game who was doing well, who was doing good, who wasn't. But it's a little disappointing to finally get to see him, and then all of a sudden, he's gone. So I think the question with Montgomery is this this is his own decision because he just wants to find a place where he can play, and he feels like that's not going to happen for him here, and this could also be the answer, or does the staff feel comfortable enough with their defensive line depth that they kind of pushed him on down the road and said, we really don't need your services anymore. I really don't know. Based on what the defensive line looks like and what they lost, my guess is it's not the latter, because I think we need is all the defensive line depth that we can get. But I'm not sure. What are your thoughts? Why now that he's finally healthy, why is this a move that you think he might be making?
I think both things can be true, although I do agree with you that I think it is more the former than the latter. I mean, some guys, they just need a change of scenery in order to flourish. And I wouldn't blame him if that was the case. And yeah, you do look at the defensive line room in 2024, it is way thinner than it was in 22 and 23. You look at the past two defensive line rooms, especially on the interior, there are a bajillion guys who all contributed pretty strongly. And now the only one that's left, I believe, is Christian Williams from what was a loaded defensive tackle room from 2022 to 2023 under Blake Baker. But yeah, at the same time, like I think he could absolutely be a beast at a lower level school just because of the physical traits. And oftentimes that's what you're looking for when you're a lower level school. So I could totally see him succeeding elsewhere. And I think it would be totally understandable if he just needed to get out of Mizzou, even if the depth chart was looking a little bit more promising this year than it had over the past couple of seasons.
Definitely. On to the last player, Michael Cox, running back. He was a former walk-on way back in 2020. Or is it even 2019? I think 2019, perhaps. It's been a while. He's in his fifth year, his last year of eligibility. He actually had some flashes in 2021 where he ran for 150 yards, 18 carries, so pretty good yards per carry there. Had a couple touchdowns. He was kind of the fan favorite, short yardage back, bringing Cox. Why aren't we bringing Cox at the goal line? He can run people over. just because he was always the biggest running back that we had on the roster. But then 2022 rolled around, and despite really being pretty poor at the running back position in 22, he barely saw the field. I think he only had a few carries in 22. And then last year, Cody Schrader takes over. He doesn't get a single carry. Got recruited over, I think, by a couple of talented freshmen as well. Fast forward to this year, not only do we have those, Jamal Roberts, DeVoris Jones, incoming Kawan Lacey, but then Drinkwitz turns around and brings in two more portal guys in Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel. And it was obvious that he was at best the fourth or fifth guy on the depth chart, probably even the sixth guy, if we're going to be honest. I think it's kind of obvious he just wanted someplace where he could play the last part of his career. What is your favorite of his 20-ish carries? What's your favorite Michael Cox carry?
Oh my God. You're forcing me to really dig deep here.
No pressure. You can say one of his 2 touchdowns. I don't even remember who they were against.
I also can't remember. Did he get carries in the Georgia game in 21? That was pretty cool, I guess.
He might have. He probably did.
I mean, so I guess that. But yeah, if take for example, I'm a J school student here at Mizzou. If I didn't get to do really anything substantial until my senior year, that wouldn't be the most productive use of my time. And that's why I'm thankful that I got opportunities right away. And Michael Cox, he, like Horse Camp, I think he fell victim to Drinkwitz's coaching philosophy, especially with him as the play caller. Drinkwitz did not really utilize tight ends and really loved using one running back, which is less common nowadays than it used to be. But really love leaning on one guy. Obviously, last season with Cody Schrader, and then you look in 20 and 21, riding one running back the entire way with Roundtree and Tyler Beatty. And so even in 2022, when there had been the most running back shuffling in terms of who was the RB1 in Drinkwitz's tenure, like you said, Cox never really saw the field. It was Schrader and Pete the whole time. And so I get it. It sucks that he was just really couldn't get in the game. I think he is a very valuable goal line back for how big and stocky and sturdy he is. I just think that place is elsewhere. And so I agree in that it was probably a smart move for him to find another place after, what is it now, 24 seasons, pretty much of little, if any, playing time.
Right. Yeah. So he's got 1 year left. Go find someplace you could be the star, Michael. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to Horse Camp and Montgomery as well. We bid you adieu. Moving forward now, the portal's open to bring in players as well. One thing that's a little different with this April portal from the earlier portal window is that there's an SEC rule that SEC players cannot transfer within the conference in this April portal without having to sit out a year. So I don't know if other conferences have that same rule, but the SEC has that specific rule just for this April portal. So if we're going portal shopping, that kind of cuts down on the players that you're able to go after if they enter in this window. Now, there are a few players maybe that entered in back in December, January that still haven't committed yet. They're still, if they're an SEC player, they're still eligible to commit somewhere else. But new players entering in this April cannot go to another SEC school unless they want to sit out a year. And that doesn't seem like something anybody wants to do these days, which is fair. So that's going to cut down quite a bit on who the coaching staff can go after in terms of looking to get Power 5 level players to come in and play immediately. So knowing that, I've already made my thoughts known about what positions I think could be used to bolster up here. What do you think, what areas of need do you see, or areas that could at least build some depth on the roster if possible this spring?
Looking offensively, I think offensive line is a position group where you can never really have too many players. So I think trying to find another, if they can, another quality lineman, whether that be on the outside or the interior, just having guys is pretty valuable. And so I think offensively, that's the number one priority. And then defensively, and Nate mentioned this in a recent article he posted, with Corey Batoon's defensive scheme, there's going to be a lot of defensive backs on the field like there were under Blake Baker. And so I think trying to get another safety or the hybrid, again, just another person, because while I do think the secondary is going to be better off than people might think, despite them losing Chris Abrams-Drain and Ennis Rakestraw and Jalen Carlisle too. And yeah, there are a lot of young guys that are still relatively unproven, even guys like Marvin Burks that made splashes last season. Drayden Norwood can be included in that too. I think getting another guy could be pretty valuable, especially if Batoon is planning on using as many defensive backs on the field at one time as we think. And we saw in that St. Louis game against Memphis, Jalen Carlisle had to play corner because lots of guys above him got hurt. And so, again, just having bodies at that position, especially because that's going to be the most represented defensive position group on the field. So I think trying to get a big splash in either safety corner, or just anybody that can play in the secondary, I think that would be really nice.
Absolutely. One thing though, I'm not sure we're going to see a whole lot of, not just here at Mizzou, but across the country in this specific window. I'm not sure we're going to see a lot of big splashes. I think those were saved for the earlier window of the season. Now, will there be a guy here or there that is unhappy with their NIL money or is disenchanted with the coaches in the spring practice and decides to hop in? Sure. I'm sure that'll happen here or there, but the amount of high caliber talent that we're going to see this time around, I have a feeling it's going to be a little more calm than it was back in the day. So really, I think the best that we're going to see, or best that we can expect or hope to do, is to build depth. Are we going to get a starter at the defensive line? Are we going to get a starting safety caliber player? Probably not. If we do, that's great, but probably not. But if we can you get a guy that can come in and give you 15 snaps a game at safety, or just be your second or third on the depth chart in case of injury? I think that's really what we're going to have to hope for this time around. Just building depth. Build depth on the offensive line, build depth on the defensive line, build depth in the secondary. That's the way you have success over a long 13-game season. Injuries happen in the SEC. Build that depth. Have guys that can step in and be ready to go if and when that happens. Speaking of talent and depth, the NFL draft is coming up. By the next time that we record this podcast, it will have already happened, which means we will know where all of the Mizzou Tigers who are draft eligible will have landed. Rockham's been covering the whole process from the Senior Bowl to the Combine to the Mizzou Pro Day a couple weeks ago. Quentin, I believe were you at the Pro Day a couple weeks ago?
I was at the Pro Day. Yes, I was at the Pro Day and the Combine and the Senior Bowl. So I've seen a lot of the 24 draft prospects.
Excellent. So we've got, I don't even know what the total number is of guys that are draft eligible. I mean, it's at least 10 guys that are draft eligible. Certainly they're not all going to get drafted. But of all the Tigers that have a shot, that participated in the Pro Day, participated in the Combine, who do you think is going to be the first off the board?
I think it's going to be Darius Robinson. I think that's been the consensus for a while now. He had an excellent Senior Bowl. That's when his stock really skyrocketed. Then he had a good Combine, had great interviews at the Combine. Then his Pro Day was pretty solid. I think he'll be taken in the first round. I feel pretty confident in that. In terms of potential landing spots, in terms of mocks I've seen as high as 16 to Seattle. The most common landing spot is Detroit for him. The Detroit Lions at number 29 overall. I think it's partially because he is from around the area, and whenever mock drafters have a chance to make an outside of football connection from a player to a team, I always feel like they try to do that a little bit too hard. And not that I think Darius wouldn't fit well in Detroit. I think they do need another young talent at the defensive end position across Aiden Hutchinson. There are other defensive end right now, I believe, is Marcus Davenport. he's kind of old. So I think it would be nice to have another option opposite of Aiden Hutchinson that can give you some fresher legs. But that's the most common spot I've seen Darius. But wherever he goes, whether it's Seattle, Detroit, I saw Jacksonville a few days ago. I thought that was pretty ambitious, but I would understand it because Jacksonville is shockingly okay for based on the fact that they had back-to-back number one overall picks in 21 and 22, have invested a lot of money in their team, but they're a middling NFL team right now. So they'll probably take best available. Not sure that'll be Darius Robinson, but I'd understand if they took him. I've seen him to the Chiefs. I've seen him to the Chiefs a handful of times. I would understand that as well. But the most common landing spot I've seen is Detroit. And with the draft being in Detroit and Darius being from around the Motor City, I think that would be really cool.
That would be my choice if we could get Darius to Kansas City. I'm holding, for those audio listeners only, I'm holding up my little mini Chiefs helmet that I have there. Will that happen? I don't know. Honestly, for Darius, I hope he goes before the Chiefs draft. But I think it would be really fun to see what a guy like Steve Spagnuolo can do with a guy who's as flexible as Darius is in terms of being able to play inside, outside. He's moved Chris Jones around a lot. He's had a lot of fun being creative with Chris Jones. Is Darius going to be the next Chris Jones? I'm not sure. That's a pretty big shoes to fill, but could he be a really good NFL player? Absolutely. As a Chiefs fan, I selfishly hope that happens. That would be great. The other guy that we've seen had his name thrown around at least a little bit in the first round. It's kind of cooled off a little bit for him of late. Is Ennis Rakestraw. Where are you seeing, or where are you thinking that he might end up landing? Will it be the first day, or it might be day two for him?
So I totally think he could be a first round pick. When looking at his prospect profile, he does what a lot of defensive coordinators want in a cornerback. He's physical, despite being undersized, great instincts, fearless, really strong open field tackler, which I feel like is an underrated skill nowadays. For some reason, I feel like that's not talked about enough. So you can leave him on an island, and I would be pretty confident in that, even with him as a rookie. But considering his injury history, especially recently, he had to pull out of the Senior Bowl. He hurt himself at the Combine, which wasn't great, and obviously he had to be held out the last few games of the season, including the Cotton Bowl with injury. And so I think teams will care about that, which could cause him to fall in the second round. And if I were to bet a lot of money on it, I would probably say he goes early second round. I don't feel as comfortable with his injury history, especially recently, projecting him to go to the first round. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does go first round. Selfishly, like you with Darius Robinson, I would love for him. I'll pull out my little mini helmet. I would love if the New York Giants took him with their first pick in the second round, number 47 overall. I think they could use another corner opposite of Deonte Banks, who I think could be a long-time corner in the NFL. Didn't necessarily have the ball production in college at Maryland, but that's not everything. And like Ennis, I have a lot of confidence in Banks to be able to hold up one-on-one. And I think if the Giants, if they can score Rakestraw in the second round, I think there's a smaller chance, but still a chance that could be a pretty formidable 1-2 punch at outside corner.
Absolutely. You brought up a great point about his most underrated skill being his tackling, his open field tackling, which really, if you find another college cornerback that tackles as well as Ennis did last year and his whole career, really, in the open field, I dare you to do that, because I don't think you can. Unfortunately, that's not where NFL teams are looking to pay big money to guys to be really good tacklers. They're looking for guys that can, have that top end speed and cover deep downfield. Can Ennis do that? I think he's shown that he can do that. I agree your worries about his injury history, or the worries that GMs may have about all the injuries he's had. None of them have any of them been huge, no. But he's had, seems like, constantly lingering a groin, a hamstring, just stuff that seems to stick around for him. So hopefully that doesn't hurt him too bad. It'd be hard to see him drop below the second round, just based on the tape that he's put out. So hopefully he gets his name called early on in the draft. A couple other guys that I feel like will probably get their names called at some point, sooner rather than later. Chris Abrams-Drain another cornerback, and then tackle Javon Foster. I'm not sure where Foster's going to land. I feel like he's one of the more underrated players in the entire draft. I just don't hear his name called a lot or talked about a lot, but the guy was a 3-year starter in the SEC. He gave up like 2 sacks in 3 whole years. I'm not sure what people aren't seeing in him. Where are your thoughts on, and where are you seeing Abrams, Drain, and Foster landing?
So Abrams, Drain, and Foster, I probably see going between rounds 3 and 5. I'd say that's probably the sweet spot. Chris, I would say he beats Ennis in terms of holy crap plays at cornerback, in terms of like recovery, instincts, just tracking. He is like an MLB outfielder when it comes to tracking the football. Some of his tape on that is really impressive. The play I keep bringing up to people when they ask is there was one play against Kentucky. I can't remember the receiver he was guarding, but it was later in the game, and the receiver ran an out route, and Abrams Drain was playing pretty far off of him. And Devin Leary throws to the right sideline, and Abrams Drain is like substantially far off from this receiver. And it didn't look like he'd be able to catch up. And in the blink of an eye, he almost intercepted it. And I remember looking around at everybody else in the press box being like, did you all just see that? That was a catch. And then I blinked, and it was almost an interception. And so he can cover ground pretty quickly, even if he's off coverage, even if it looks like he did get beat, especially on a short route. So I think that's pretty promising. Like Ennis, he's got a slimmer build, which isn't great, but then again, you can bulk up. In terms of fit, I can see Jacksonville taking a swing on him if they don't get a defensive back in the first couple of rounds, because I think that's an area of need for them. So that's one of the teams I could see him going to. And then with Javon, I think his versatility is pretty impressive. It's something he's mentioned time and time again when people ask him what his biggest strengths are. And I think versatility as an offensive lineman is pretty valuable. And he's good. I think that's arguably the more important part, is that he's good at his job. I rarely ever saw Javon Foster get destroyed. He was never a liability, especially against the competition he was playing in the SEC. Over a span of several years. This isn't just he wasn't just a 1-year wonder. And so I could see him going around like rounds 4 to 5 to a team that didn't take an offensive lineman that might low-key need one, maybe realizing, we should probably get one around now before the end of the draft. So I could totally see Javon being taken in the middle rounds, whether that be day 2 or day 3.
Definitely. If he goes in the 5th round, that is going to be a massive steal for some team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If he falls that down. I mean, do I expect him or think he should go in the 1st, 2nd round? No. There's plenty of really talented tackles out there, but his ability to play left tackle at a high level, he can play right tackle. I'm sure if you give him a few months to work on it, not the easiest transition, but he can do it. I think that's a guy that can start and be a contributor in the NFL for a long time. If a team will take a chance on him, but it's going to be a steal. Whoever it is, hopefully it's the Chiefs. That would be great.
I think I'm going to make one more point about Javon. I think something else when you watch his tape that's really important to note is that Mizzou ran a lot of outside zone this year. Much was made about how successful they were running outside zone. And yes, Cody Schrader had a lot to do with that. Yes, play action had a lot to do with that. Just deception within play calling had a lot to do with that. Threats all over the field had a lot to do with that. But you're not running outside zone to an offensive tackle side if you don't think they can get to the 2nd level pretty quickly. If Javon Foster wasn't mobile, Kirby Moore wouldn't have called outside zone to his side a lot. But he did. And if you look at plays like, I think the Arkansas game really stands out because they murdered them on the ground. And they just – something I really appreciated about Kirby Moore, he takes the Yogi Berra mentality of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Arkansas kept getting bulldozed by Mizzou's offensive line on outside zone, and Cody Schrader would hit the hole hard. A lot of that had to do with Javon Foster getting to the 2nd level and sealing guys there, whether it was a defensive end, linebacker, defensive back. He proved pretty adept at sealing all kinds of guys at different levels. And I think especially with offenses that like to get their playmakers the ball at or behind the line of scrimmage, having a mobile offensive tackle is going to be really important, and I think Javon Foster provides that.
Absolutely. Hopefully his name goes higher than the 5th round, just for his own sake and the contract he signs. He'll definitely get drafted at some point, though. Guys that may or may not get drafted. So we've got a long list here of good college players who probably will at least see free agent contracts if they don't get drafted. Cody Schrader, Xavier Delgado, Jalen Carlisle, Josh Landry. If you had to bet which, if any of those guys will get their name called next week.
Probably, sorry, I'm cheating and picking 2 guys. I'll go with Carlisle and Schrader. I think Carlisle, just because there's a lot to work with athletically. He had by far the best testing of any of the Mizzou athletes in terms of relative athletic score at the combine. While that isn't everything, when you're in the later rounds of any draft, you're just looking for something that you can work with, even if it's not a finished product. And yes, Carlisle is a veteran. He had been at Mizzou for a really long time. But I honestly think he could be an okay linebacker in the league, or a safety linebacker hybrid like a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Isaiah Simmons, just somewhere where you can use a guy you can use all over the field, because I think Carlisle has the size to be able to play in the box. And I also think he does have enough mobility to be able to play on the back end. Whether I think he would be good in a starting role, I don't think so right now, but I'd love to be wrong about that. And so I think a team could totally take a swing on him if they have a vision for that, because he offers a lot of versatility. And then Cody Schrader, just a darn good running back. I mean, and he's not just straight line speed. He's got agility. There was an East-West component to his game that, at least to me, was not there in 2022 and wasn't there when he was at Truman State at the level it was in 2023. Pretty good at cutting back even before the line of scrimmage. Pretty solid run vision. And then obviously the best part about him is that he never stops running. He never stops going. He keeps churning, both up here in his head and with his legs as well. And so I really think any Northeast team, their fan base would really appreciate his services, because I think he's got a toughness that New Yorkers or Pennsylvanians or Bostonians would really appreciate, whoever it ends up being, should one of those teams take a chance on him. Selfishly, again, I would love if we went to the Giants. They've had their fair share of running backs taken in the mid to late rounds, and I would not be surprised if Schrader's another one of those guys. So I totally think either of them could get drafted, and I'd be very happy if they did, because that means some guaranteed money, I believe, and more stability than if you were a UDFA.
Absolutely, and make it much more likely, because the team has invested resources through that draft pick, more likely that you make the team come fall, or at least the practice squad. Where, if you make a practice squad, if they can see a guy like Cody Schrader work day in and day out, see him get better every day, he's the kind of guy that just needs a chance, right? You just got to give him one crack of the door open. He's going to shove his foot in there. He's going to stick his elbow in there, and he's going to make it happen. So yeah, that's a guy that just give him one chance, and he will do everything that he needs to do to make it happen with that chance. Well, that's about does it for us today, Quentin. Any last thoughts about the draft? You want to throw out any big predictions? Some player's going to go at this team at this spot.
Okay. If I have one hot take, I'm not much of a hot taker. I don't really enjoy doing that, because I don't really like saying things that I only kind of believe. But at the same time, I think Ennis, if I were to have a hot take, I think Ennis goes in the middle of the first round.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is, again, it's tough saying that, especially considering the quality of the cornerback position at the top with guys like Terrion Arnold, Quinyon Mitchell, Nate Wiggins, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Like, I could totally see all of those guys going ahead of Ennis Rakestraw, but all it takes is one team to really believe and look past his medical history and see a guy that they think could start outside on day one. And while I may not think Ennis can do that at the level of a guy like an Arnold or a Mitchell or maybe even a Nate Wiggins, I could still foresee it. So that's probably my one hot take. I would like my other hot take to be like Harrison Mevis gets drafted. But at the same time, the recent history of using a draft pick on kickers, especially a higher one, not good at all. And I think teams have realized, especially with a guy like Brandon Aubrey for the Cowboys coming in, having never played in the NFL and then being arguably the best kicker in the league immediately outside of Justin Tucker and maybe Harrison Butker. I think teams realize that they don't need to spend a draft pick on a kicker. You look at a guy also like Jake Moody, even though he was really good in college at Michigan, and especially in 2021, was actually pretty good. He just missed a really important kick one time against Cleveland that would have won the game. And then I'm trying to think of another example. Cade York, Browns took him pretty high, and he was not successful at all. And so I think teams are hesitant to use draft picks now on kickers. Sucks for our boy, Thicker Kicker, but I think he will find a home, especially considering that, A, he can kick really far. That's helpful. He can kick pretty accurately when the snap and the hold is good. That's important to note. And 3, he's clutch. He makes kicks when they matter most. Auburn 2022, notwithstanding. All the other times he got an opportunity to make a clutch field goal, he came through. So I think he will find a home somewhere. I just don't think it's with a draft pick, unfortunately.
I agree. And probably, well, it depends, but it could be better that he doesn't get drafted. If you're, especially as a kicker, you want to be able to go to a situation where you're going to have a real chance to compete and win a job.
Yeah.
And if you're signing an undrafted free agent contract, you have some say. I mean, certainly it depends on which teams offer you a contract. But if there's 3-4 teams that want to bring you in to camp at least, you have the opportunity to pick which one you think you're going to have the best chance of competing and winning a job there. If you get drafted, you're kind of stuck with where you land, at least for a few years. So for his best chance, I think, is just to scout it out, find the best team where he can compete the best, go there, wow them with his leg, and let the rest be history at that point. Well, that's all we have for today. We'll check back in here in a couple of weeks, barring any breaking news before then. Hopefully we'll have some more recruiting commitments, both through the portal and prep recruiting by then to talk about, as well as a fresh crop of 5 Mizzou drafted players. 5, 6. Let's go with 6. We'll root for 6 players drafted in the draft. We'll chat about where they landed, what that means moving forward for them. We will see, but until then, you can follow the show at Rock M Radio. You can follow me at Burst to Hurst, and follow Quentin at Quentin Corpuel. Until next time, MIZ.
ZOU.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.